Hey everyone, my name's Chris Lambert, and on this channel we talk Kanye West. And today we are talking Kanye's newest feature, and it's from Pray For Me on St. John's album While the World Was Burning. It just came out last night. So we are diving into what Kanye is saying on this verse and looking at kind of the themes and exploring the topic. And I have the rest of Kanye's verses from 2020 pulled up here, just kind of take a look at what he's been doing, because I think there's some cool things and cool little details to look at. And starting off, we're going to talk about a little more broadly the song Pray For Me, which is just kind of a very easy and melodic R&B song. It has a little bit of an airy, ethereal quality to it. You can see it's just 2 minutes and 53 seconds, and that the chorus just comes in at the beginning and the end, which I think gives it kind of a nice structure and doesn't interrupt the flow in the middle, where if the chorus were to have that like insertion right there. And when we look at St. John's part and what this song is doing, there seems to be a battle kind of going on, low-key, or a tension that St. John is exploring with others, right? And it's in the idea of like, pray for me, but you see at the end of the verse, he says, pray for me and my enemies, which kind of gets into this idea that he does have enemies and these tensions that arise from interactions with others. And that kind of comes into his verse here. Starting off, them guys know don't ever approach me. They know I got it, got to look at me closely. So already he's kind of setting up this difference between him and these other people and not to interact with him. And then he gets into some of his success before getting into like a little bit more of antagonisms and tactics that other people have, ending this verse with, I'm just trying to move forward, they keep pulling me backwards. So it's really looking at some of these final lines that you see a little bit more of the motif and maybe some of the theme that's developing. And just like, pray for me and my enemies, I'm just trying to move forward, they keep pulling me back, and the tensions that arise from these interactions he's having with other people. And that's kind of the energy that Kanye comes into this song speaking to, right? The same kind of way in Feel Away, he's speaking to people feeling a kind of way. And on Ego Death, he talks about the ego. Here, he's picking up on what St. John's talking about in these tensions or comparisons and contrast with others, and speaking directly to that. And that comes up right away with, see, this visceral reaction's not reciprocal. I think getting at the idea that the visceral reaction somebody's having to Kanye and what he says and does is not reciprocated by him. So even though they're getting outraged and saying things about Kanye, he's not feeling that same outrage in response. He's staying cool, calm, and collected, keeping it 300 like the Romans. And everyone else is just like freaking out. So you get that dichotomy that he's setting up, which he furthers in the next line. Matter of fact, the way you acting is just typical. Like, you are basic while I am a little less typical, a little bit more special. Matter of fact, the force I'm giving you, centrifugal, which is pretty interesting given the fact that on Na Na Na, he was talking about, I know you think Obi-Wan getting tired now. Don't jump, Anakin. I got the higher ground. Just Star Wars reference, right? And now here we're getting the force I'm giving you, centrifugal. But centrifugal force is a real thing as opposed to Star Wars force. But centrifugal force is kind of the when something spins around a center point. So you can see the centrifugal force of this whatchamacallit, hammer thrower, or like somebody going on a loop on a roller coaster, like a merry-go-round. These are all examples of centrifugal force. So there's something about the idea of Kanye being in the center, right? And all this force is coming out of him, which plays then into the idea of Star Wars, I think, a little bit, or just people are spinning around him or putting him almost in like the center of the universe, which is kind of an interesting statement to make, but also like one of the most scientific ways I think Kanye has ever bragged about ego, which big credit there for mixing together braggadocio and just, physics. So we have that. And matter of fact, if I just doubled up, I'd triple you. which I don't know if I necessarily fully grasp this at the moment. Like the idea that if Kanye doubles up, he triples what this other person is, which I guess is just saying like he's that much greater than this other person. But there's probably some more context that I'm completely missing at the moment. So if you have any ideas about doubled up, I'd triple you. But I think the just basic core of this is just the idea that Kanye is not just ahead of this person, but that much more ahead of this person, which may be some kind of clever additional context to that or subtext to that. So got to come up with something different, dude. Which I do like this too. You notice it's like double up, I triple you. And here we have these two lines doubled and it's something. No, never mind. I thought it was repeated. I don't know. Yeah. Something said 3 times. I don't know if this is like on purpose, but it's just the line repeated twice with something 3 times. So he is tripling up and he is doubling the line. Which again, could be coincidental, but is also kind of cool if it's not. But gotta come up with something different, dude. So again, just like you're being too typical, like you're being basic, like come up with something different to say, do, act, behave, like you're too basic. Especially when yay, and he speeds it up, which is really funny to me. Like it almost sounds like a skeleton rattling, like yay, or somebody getting electrocuted. I was thinking skeleton because of Na's imagery, right? But just like the electrocution or like a quickening of thoughts. And I do wonder a little bit, like Joe Rogan's talked about Kanye and how Kanye thinks it's like he's getting all these all this voltage that other people aren't getting. Maybe they're getting like 10 watts and Kanye's getting 100 watts, 1,000 watts. And it really does feel like Kanye is getting into that idea of like being electrocuted with ideas or with energy and just like speeding up his name a little bit. But especially when yay in a different mood, especially when yay in a different mood. So he's just in a different place than everybody else, especially this basic guy. And like, you got to come up with something different if you're going to be on Kanye's level or impress Kanye or affect him, right? If you're going to get a visceral reaction out of Kanye, you really got to come up with something different, especially when he's in the mood that he's in. And then they want to ask, is he well when my mind's on Israel? Which kind of gets back into this whole thing too, like the visceral reaction people have to Kanye's behavior and being. And he's redefining it now as, is he mentally stable? Which gets back to different mood. And when he's saying my mind's on Israel, which Israel, really the setting for a lot of the Bible and religion. So I think that that's kind of what he's addressing specifically there. When he's just thinking about religion and God and turning to religion, people are starting to ask about his mental well-being, which a lot of people did. I saw a ton of articles from people just being like, oh, people turn to religion when they're having bipolar delusions. It's like people also just turn to religion after going through a traumatic experience. And Kanye went through a pretty traumatic experience in 2016 with having the mental episode, having Kim kidnapped and held hostage. Like, that'd be intense. And it was something where he was religious to begin with, and just getting back to it after being a parent and going through some of these stressors. I mean, there's a different reason why he might turn his mind to Israel, so to speak, right? I know that I'm a live to tell that we lived through a living hell, which Kanye has not been shy about critiquing modern society and the state of modern society, going all the way back to the college dropout. Before, it was mostly just talking about consumerism, right? Or power dynamics and the Black experience in America. And he's been elaborating on that and building on that over the years. But now it's kind of come into a moral quandary as well, or a moral critique, as Kanye has gotten back to religion. And that morality was a big part of Jesus is King. And it's been a big part of how he's been talking about society on Twitter, like specifically being impressed by the technology of TikTok, but finding it low-key horrifying, some of the content that he was seeing on TikTok. So I think he's just kind of getting into this idea that we still have these unfair power dynamics, we still have this ill morality, and we're living through or have lived through a living hell. And when he talks about that we lived through, I think that there's something with a hopefulness to that. Like, oh, we got beyond it. We fixed it. But I'm going to be able to tell people I lived through it. And he says, live through a living hell under the Remy spell in a living cell, which Genius has that this is probably like Remy Martin, which is one of the most expensive liquors. So this idea of like you're under the Remy spell of like being intoxicated, being drunk, but also like that you have to buy Remy Martin to drink, which is can get up, they say, to what, $50 to $13,000 a bottle. Does anybody really need to spend $13,000 on a bottle of alcohol? But there's people that are caught up in consumerism, in spending, that think like, oh, this is how I show off my wealth. And Kanye has kind of been critiquing lately the idea of people buying things that they don't need. I mean, he gets back to that in 2004, right? All Falls Down. But he's talked about it lately on Twitter as well. So I wonder if that's part of it. He's just like, you know, getting back to his typical commentary on consumerism and saying we're living in a living cell. Like we are imprisoned by our consumerist instincts and also intoxicated by the things that we are buying and spending money on, which isn't very different. Excuse me. You can see down here from All Falls Down and the line, even if you in a Benz, you still in a coupe, which, yeah, you're under the Remy spell, you're in a living cell. You're buying something expensive and you think that makes you powerful, but it just is one of the things that are putting you in a cell. So this ain't living real, which is where that comes from, right? Like you're spending this money, but that's not what living real is. Like buying fancy things, drinking fancy alcohol, that's not living real. This is a different deal, bruh. This is a different field. Tell me how you feel. So I think he's just kind of saying like, I'm in a different place than where you're at. And bruh, a little antagonistic, right? And tell me how you feel. And just kind of leaves it at that, which is an interesting place to leave off on. I mean, I guess it kind of fits because, see, this is a visceral reactions, not reciprocal. So Kanye's critiquing their reaction to him at the beginning of the verse, and then after he talks back to them and responds, he's now saying like, now tell me how you feel. Are you having the same visceral reaction? Do you still hate me? Do you understand me more? Like, do you feel embarrassed by what you're saying? Like, do you feel enlightened by what I'm saying? I think it's actually like an honest question based on what his stance is, but it comes off as you're having this bad reaction, or it doesn't come off, but I think the whole of the verse is you had this bad reaction to me, but we're not on the same level. We're not talking about the same things. I'm explaining myself now. How do you feel? And there's still arrogance in that, right? Like the centrifugal force idea of Kanye in the center of things and people just kind of moving around him. But I do like the verse. I like how it's structured. I like the concept and ideas of it. And you can see how Kanye has been, I think, really precise in these songs. Like Wash Us in the Blood maybe is a bit more all over the place because it's not a verse, right? And not all over the place in a bad way. It's just broader. It has more moving parts to it because it is a Kanye song that I think was initially planned for an album. So there's going to be the context of the album. It's going to be having a place alongside the other songs. So there's a lot of stuff that might seem a little less meaningful just in general that would have more meaning in context of the album. But even the verse still gets into like a pretty straight up idea of they just don't want me to be Kanye, right? And getting at this tension in society that he was exploring. And ego death, even though this verse was written back in 2018, you can see how good Kanye is here when kind of, again, putting himself against others. A lot of people be thinking, but I'm just a sayer. You can see how he gets into ego specifically at the end of the verse. All these admirations, likes, and false validations feeding to our ego talk for something Negro, which, damn. Especially playing off the artist can't perform the Super Bowl, but it's okay for the players, and then making that statement at the end. It's just Kanye, in this same way that he did on Pray for All, having this concept that he wants to explore, which is calling something out, and having a great beginning frame to that and ending frame to that, like the opening punch and then the uppercut at the end. And it fits in with the idea of just ego death. It doesn't necessarily fit in with like Ty Dolla $ign, because Ty Dolla $ign's just kind of talking about this relationship that's falling apart. I guess Kanye, you could look at that a bit more metaphorically, the way that we do in Kanye songs, but Kanye kind of takes it to the next level of society. So it's not just this individual relationship, but looking at society, but using a similar structure that we saw in Pray For Me. And then you have track 6, which just has this random Kanye snippets. No long talks, everything is my fault. No long emails, no long text, everything is my fault. You need to get to the point already. We ain't trying to get to the club already, which just kind of plays into this being a breakup song as well, and getting to the point of the breakup. And Kanye doesn't do much here, but I think he does add a nice context and vibe to this song. And then Na Na Na, like with Wash Us in the Blood, has more going on than Pray For Me and Ego Death in track 6. But you can see Kanye once again focused on kind of societal issues, right? And trying to critique society and critique where society's at, while also bragging a little bit about his presidential campaign, which dude still got 60,000 votes. But you can see right here is where we're seeing Kanye talk about this battle that he's waging, and maybe puts a little bit more context into the lines about I know that I'm a live to tell that we live through a living hell. And this is some of the living hell that he sees, is just they are masters and slaves in this world today, and he's trying to put an end to that and cause people to rise up. So that rebellion, that like society needs to make changes concept is part of this song as well. And then Feel Away gets into very similar territory. You can see Don't Let Them Make You Feel Away, which is how it starts, with Kanye kind of saying like, you need to be stronger than the people that make you feel a certain way, which has a really nice context to this, right? Like, don't let them make you feel away. And here he's saying this visceral reaction is not reciprocal. You're not making me feel away. Like, your emotions are not getting to me. So, ha. And he ends this verse specifically with, woo, I bet they feel away, after making all of these statements. So he kind of reverses the power balance here of, in this first part, saying, don't let them make you feel away, because that's how they're going to control you. And yeah, how they control our mind, how they control us though, how they get us so emotional. By getting you emotional, they control you, which again, visceral reaction, right? And Kanye not reciprocating, he's in a different mood, he is not giving in to these forces. And then at the end, after he kind of goes on the offensive and responds to 2 Chainz saying, you think you Nat Turner, right? And he's just like, yeah, I'm a leader. I am leading people. We're going to make a difference in this world. And by making that difference, he's saying, I bet they feel away. I bet the people that are trying to control me now feel in response to what I'm doing, which shows that Kanye is the one that has the power, right? He's making the others emotional, which again gets back to kind of what he's doing here. Like, tell me how you feel, right? Like, you were the one trying to make me feel, I made you outraged, and now like you tell me how to feel. So I do like the fact that we have Pray For Me and Feel Away both having kind of a similar concept of emotional response, but looking at it in just different perspectives and coming to different conclusions, or exploring it in different ways through that process. There are similarities, and I could imagine somebody being like, they're too similar, but I think it's different enough to be really kind of interesting to me. I think they work together as a statements rather than necessarily being in conflict with each other or derivative of one another, right? So that's cool to see. I didn't quite realize that when I got started. I mean, when I saw this, How You Feel, I was like, oh, it's kind of like Feel Away. But after just going through this and now looking at Feel Away, it does seem like Kanye like either wrote them at the same time or just was aware of having written one and kind of made the other just in the same mindset of wanting to talk about the same idea. But I like it. I think of these songs, Wash Us in the Blood is still my favorite. And then it might go to Pray For Me, Ego Death, Feel Away, Nah Nah Nah, and track 6. I think that's how I'd currently rank them, but I could be talked into feeling differently. You know, I could feel a different way. I'm not set in that. So if you have a visceral reaction to any of this and you want to share, go ahead and leave a comment down below. And did you like Pray For Me? Did you? Did you? Did you? And that's it for this video. If you're enjoying the channel and you want to support us, the easiest way is to like, subscribe, and comment, as those things tell YouTube that this is a channel people engage with, and then they show it to more people. We also have our podcast, Watching the Throne, a lyrical analysis of Kanye West, where we go line by line through Kanye's discography, revealing the narrative and thematic depths of his discography, kind of like what was done here, except it's me and Travis rather than just me talking, which ends up being a little bit more fun, but it will forever change how you listen to Kanye's music. So if you want to give that a shot, it's on every podcast platform, but the bulk of our episodes are on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Kanye Podcast. And that's it for today. I'll be back soon with more Kanye news and content. Until then, stay wavy and keep it loopy. Cheers.